Okay.
Edie, if you know offhand, could you let Jim know? Otherwise, I'll check into the file later today.
I'm sorry, can you
And
repeat what
alternates
you're
also
asking
need to
for?
submit those, is that correct?
Yes, I do believe they're provided for alternates as well. Edie, did I hear you chime in there?
Yeah, can you just repeat what was being requested, please? I missed it.
Director Abel was wondering if we had received his financial disclosure.
I do believe so, but when I'm back in my office, I'll double check.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Edie. I sent it about 4 or 5 days ago.
Morning,
I
Jim
sent it
and all.
before the 15th. Good morning, Nelba. Okay, well, we're finally at 9:30, and I'd like to welcome everybody to this meeting, which is being broadcast from my kitchen table in the territories of the Lakwatak people. And go to confirmation of quorum, which I believe we have.
Yes, you do.
Is Brenda here yet or not?
We haven't seen Director Lee sign in yet, but you do have a quorum.
Okay, well, does anybody mind if we wait a minute or two? Give Brenda a minute or two to get her.
Probably best if we wait a couple minutes for her. We'll nudge her with a request to join here.
Okay. Morning, Dave.
Good morning.
Okay, one more minute and we'll go ahead and start without her.
There she is.
There you are, Brenda.
There's a request
Welcome.
to join button, and I
You're
just
muted.
because she's always like has trouble. But if you do the request to join, all she has to just accept that. Yeah.
Click on it. Yeah, Edith just sent me the request to join, thank God, because every time I tried to join, I came up with a Quadra Island public hearing site on Teams. So I had to like leave that and start over again. Sorry about that.
Well,
I
you're
always have trouble.
here now, so we have a complete quorum, and I'll go ahead and call this meeting of Wednesday, January 19th to order. The Electoral Area Services Committee. It's this a special meeting for the budget. So on the adoption of the public agenda.
Move adoption.
Second.
Okay, and I'll just note that I do have an item to insert somewhere, I think probably in the area C section. that's more of just a question. Okay, all right, so as amended,
I moved.
anyone opposed? Oh, yeah, seconder?
Second.
Okay, anyone opposed to that? All right, we'll move on to petitions and delegations, which we have none. So business items, additional EASC budget meeting. A report from the CAO be received.
Move receipt.
Second.
Okay,
Question,
any
just,
discussion,
So,
discussion on,
I don't know if Director Anderson wants to go first. I just have a little bit of an intro, so maybe Director Anderson can go first.
what's the process, Christian? Nova?
yeah, just a high level, what are we up to? I'm trusting that staff have a presentation, and then, I do have a few Cortez related resolutions I've written down. Do we just get to go through any joint or single participant services over the next couple hours, I'm trusting?
Yeah, so I'll just kind of give us an intro then, if I can, Mr. Chair, about what the intention of today is. So this is the second of the special budget meetings that the EASC has requested. So if the directors will remember, when we come up with a budget calendar, we've outlined dates and meetings in there to go through the budget. The EASC group suggested 2 more meetings. So we've concluded the one-on-one meetings that we went through all individual and share service with the directors to receive input in late 2021. We had an additional meeting, special budget meeting of the area directors to once again go over individual services in their area. We have now had year ends and assessments. We have consolidated all the information that we've received from the directors. We have updated assessments. We have come dangerously close to year-end numbers that they're close enough for us to put requisition numbers on the table that are not going to change very much at all unless directors at this meeting have significant changes to that, so that you can see the impact that you're looking at for your services in your electoral areas, as well as your shared services. I have not included anything regional services because those are inclusive of the board and will be presented in a draft budget to the board on, I believe the date's February 9th. So this opportunity today is hopefully to make any minor adjustments that the East directors feel they want to put in. You've had an opportunity to look at all your individual services many times for many months. We have also included the GL account codes for every single service for the shared services and the single participant services in there. Mike has a high-level presentation for you to talk about what we believe is critical to you, which is a shift in tax base to residential. So he can identify where the significant changes are coming from and why, talk about property assessments, but really the main purpose of this is not a meeting nor the other one that staff is needed or required to produce a budget. So we are here to receive one final bit of input from the EA directors. There is an opportunity and time for us then to put that into the draft budget. So whatever comes out of here will go into the draft budget presented to the board on February 9th. So having said that, I think I'll slide it over to Mike. Mike can run through a presentation, and then we'll take items from the East directors that they want to discuss.
Okay, that's great, Mike. I look forward to hearing your presentation because it is certainly a hot topic on Quadra Island right now. This shift of assessment and the incredible increase in assessments on Quadra, and I don't know if it's the same for other areas, but I'm getting questions every day and I can't answer them. So
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. Yeah, that's what I primarily focus on for this meeting. As Dave said, it's mostly for discussion, but I did produce a lot of charts, and they try and quantify the assessment shift. So they're a bit complicated. So I was just going to take a brief run through everything because we have the rest of the data. So
Okay, you go ahead. You're muted, Mike.
I'm sorry about that. It was a great intro on my part. Trust me. Yeah, I'm primarily going to focus on the assessment shift during my presentation. We provided all the general ledger accounts, as Dave said, and then using that data, I've shown what the tax impact's going to be. But the number one factor this year will be the assessment shift. So of that, there's two parts to consider. The first is the assessment shift between the regional areas. So this is going to affect everybody's shared service. If your total assessment base, or if your total tax base has changed relative to the rest of the areas, higher or lower, that's going to essentially shift taxes into your area. Once taxes in your area.
Oh, you're off again.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm not sure why that's muting when I shift screens here. And then the next thing to consider is the assessment shift in between classes. So I'll have two charts to talk, but what we're seeing this year is a very large increase in residential and smaller increases amongst all the other classes. When we do our budgets, we measure a lot of things in household tax increase or decrease. So this year, effectively, even if you were to lower or cut their requisitions, because the difference of because of the assessment changes, the residences are likely going to see an increase. So the first chart. Sorry, I don't know why that's always muting on me here.
Maybe each time you change, you could just reactivate your.
Yeah,
mic.
that's right. So, so this first chart is the total tax base shift. This, and of course, this shift determines how much total tax will get applied to your area. So, area B and C are above average, while area A and D are below average. So it's effectively going to shift taxes out of area A and area D into B and C.
So why?
Pardon me?
I have to say why.
It's just the
So if I
the
can,
total tax every year the tax bases change relative. So last year, if everyone recalls, area A and D were relatively high, and then but yeah, it's just the BC assessment data. When it comes out, we get the various assessment levels.
So if I can, Mike, just trying to interject, I apologize. I can't do hands up because I'm in the boardroom. So the assessment, we're requisitioned for the most part based on assessments. And so assessments are different in all the other areas. So I think what Mike's trying to say is if you take, the net assessments of the SRD, and as they change unequally, different areas have a greater or lesser assessment in there. So I think what Mike's trying to say is if you take our net requisition of assessments, area A and D have not gone up as much as B and C. So where your net assessments are larger, then your net requisition is going to naturally increase there.
And just to
Well, I guess.
just to further interrupt, this
Sorry, I guess go ahead.
I'm just going to say we're talking here about shared services only, not services within an electoral area only, but shared between areas. That's where that shift happens.
Okay, it's still a total mystery to me as to why Take area D, for example, versus area C, for example. Why assessments would go up 24.9% versus 40.3%, basically the same in B. When, if you look at market value of houses in those areas, they're probably going to be very similar. So why are the assessments going so crazy?
You're asking the wrong people, basically. I mean, this is, I get your question, but this is out of our control, right? Assessments are provided to us from BC Assessment, so, not too profound, but it is what it is. So we can't support it or justify it other than these are the numbers they give us.
Right. So in the end, at the end of the day, you think the board might be able to put forward a motion to UBCM trying to, equalize this ridiculous discrepancy that's happening. And it's probably happening throughout the entire province, I would assume. And I know you're going to talk about tax shifting within the classes. I'll have some things to say there too. But anyway, it's really, really ridiculous when you look at the assessments that are happening on an individual property, and it's just, they're way out of whack with the market. That's all there is to it.
If I could make
Okay,
a
go
comment.
ahead. Sorry. Go ahead, Gerald.
Yeah, the assessors, when they come around, put whatever number they think's appropriate, and they look at areas that are close by that have sold. But that being the case, from year to year, they readjust. So last year area A was high, this year area A is low. In the end, it kind of all evens out, but it takes some time.
Well, the reason I asked the question originally was because right on my assessment, it says no properties of similar type have sold in your area for the past 3 years. So, that used to be the way you just mentioned is what we used to look at was, okay, there's a 10-acre piece down the road that's very similar type of house, has trees, blah, blah, blah. And it sold for so much money. So therefore, we're going to look at your place as being similar in price. That can't be the case if they tell me right there in writing on the assessment that they haven't sold anything at this end of the island in the past 3 years. So their argument falls apart.
I think Director Anderson
go
has
ahead,
her hand
Mike.
up there.
Oh, sorry. You talked about not putting hands up, and then I just assumed, okay, we're not using hands, and then I see a hand. Go ahead, Nova. You're muted.
Trying to be polite here. No, I completely concur. The assessments are stunningly high in a year. And I did speak to Mike about this yesterday to ask whether there was any kind of collective appeal a community might make or the regional district might make to at least understand, if not try to challenge. I am aware of one property here that went up 77% this year with no material changes to the property. So it's just, it's out of control. So I understand how when in area B and C that the assessments are higher, that we will get a larger proportionate share of shared service taxes. I get that. I wanted to just also point out and make sure I've got correct, not that we would necessarily do this, but what this would also allow, would it not, is when you've got a service where you're maxing out the requisition, which is the case for community parks in area B and potentially others, Grant and Aid, I think, where consistently we've maxed out the requisition. If we wanted to continue to max out the requisition because assessments have increased, the maximum requisition would also increase proportionally. Is that correct? I'm not suggesting I want to do that. I'm just trying to understand the tools we have.
Yes, you're correct.
So we could requisition 30% more or 40% more in those services this year just because assessments are up.
Yes,
Okay, thanks.
but we don't, just for, we adjust the mill rate accordingly, but
No.
yeah.
Understood.
Yeah.
I too have been fielding many questions about my assessments at 40% or my taxes at 40%, and I muddled my best way through an answer, but they're certainly not directly proportional.
I think the, you know, and Mike has characterized it as when, you know, many people ask him that, and he characterizes it as the mill rate is basically dropping like a rock, right? Because assessments go up so high, you have to counterbalance that, so.
When you say the mill rate, people ask me about that too. What is the mill rate for the regional district? And I've said, we don't really talk mill rate
No, we
at the
don't.
regional district.
Yeah, you're right. I'm just using a term that kind of people can relate to. You're right. Because we're not a municipality and we have all kinds of different services and that, but it's just something that people can relate to, so.
So is what we use sort of akin to zero-based budgeting? We look at what the service needs and then we go from there?
Well, again, board's adopted a bit of a basis base, so instead of 0, I think we use a number like 2. You'll see if we use 2 this year, just for an example, on paper, looks like CPI will be about 2.5, 2.6. That'll be posted any day now. Theoretically, we would be dropping behind cost if we didn't raise it 2.5 or 2.6. Now, we're not proposing that, but we just, the board has supported keeping up with the CPI, if you will. So instead of saying 0, we were trying to keep up with cost of living, and that is a basis-based budget.
Okay. All right. Well, that's basically what I was getting at. I use 0, but 0 being we start with what it is we need for the service, whatever service it is, and that's what the requisition in the end.
Yeah, that's correct. So, you know, the services will need fuel and energy and all that jazz. So we'll make adjustments for those with CPI. But yeah, the bottom line is, and that's kind of the intent of the one-on-ones and the business cases, anything that either staff or directors have would be stuff that we want to talk beyond that. And that's why when I talk about the operational items, nothing is changing, and if it is changing, we bring it to the director's attention. So if there's no news about an item or a service or a line item, it's because it's adhered to that basis base, and there's really nothing to talk about. We're just maintaining and keeping up with cost of living.
Okay, so this may be a year where we need to go out to communities and have public presentations when they're allowed to tell people what's happening with their taxes, because I don't know if any director.
So, Mr. Chair, if I may, at the one-on-ones, we specifically identified and requested each director if they wanted that. All of the directors declined.
Okay, well, now that we see the numbers, I guess that's what I'm saying, Dave, is that, you know, we were going on, at least I was going based on previous years of interest from the communities. I think maybe this year there might be more interest. I don't know. I could be wrong, but if there is more interest, then we decided that we did need a community meeting. Will there be an opportunity for us to ask for that?
That opportunity has come and gone. We're far too late in the process for that. We'll be bringing a draft budget in February. There's opportunity certainly for the public to see that and make comment on it, but community presentations, that opportunity was offered up to directors, and they all declined.
I would request, I completely concur with our CEO. I'm not interested in community input on the budget per se, but I think it might be worth even a little recorded presentation by our CFO around assessments and just how assessments relate to taxes at a high general level to be able to answer people's concerns about that relationship, not getting into the weeds on any specific budgets, but that we can point people to. If it was a, you know, a 5 or 10 minute little YouTube video, I think it would go a long way.
Yeah,
Or if there's some version of that.
yeah, I think that's a good idea. So let's hold that thought until the draft budget and you see, now Mike's gonna give you a preview. Having said all that, I'm just gonna contaminate the process here a little bit, is aside from this shift to residential from things like private managed forest lands, the numbers in all the regional districts and munis and the A's are very, very good. I think you'd be quite happy. What you're not going to be happy with is this shift in tax base. If you ask me, that's what is going to be the issue. And so let's hold that thought. I think it's a good idea, and it could be a motion at the board when you actually see the draft budget that you know, maybe the staff come up, put on our website, do a little explanation video of these impacts. But I think at the end of the day, you're going to see that it's basically the tax shift that's going to be the issue. If you took that away, again, I'll contaminate Mike's presentation. Sorry, Mike. In Area D, for example, per the average home, because that's what we always do, I think we'd be lowering the individual taxes by $5. The shift in taxes has added, I might be off a little bit, like, but $65. So given last year's parameters, we would go to the Area D director and say, we're lowering people's taxes by $5 a home. Now we're increasing it by 65. Over 100% of that is due to this shift in taxes. So again, I think it's a good suggestion and it's a good explanation. And let's hold that thought to the draft budget on the 9th. And I think it's something we'll take into consideration because people will want an explanation. And the area directors shouldn't be responsible for that shift because you had nothing to do with it. It's not within your control. It's something that maybe you can lobby and advocate at UBCM and AVICC and those kind of things. But that's where you're going to see your biggest impact.
Okay, and that, you know, I know we talked about that a bit, Dave, the other day, but that shift, you know, I think the highlight in at least area C and B is going to be that shift on the forestry issue, where forest companies are basically paying zero now, and they're going to be paying a minus number in the new year, and it's going to be going on to private residences. It's just, it's appalling. Anyway,
Yeah. So I'm taking a lot of Mike's thunder away. So maybe let's let him carry on because he's got a bunch of stuff.
I'm sorry.
No worries. I did take just a couple notes to add to that past conversation. Yeah, there's two types of budgeting. There's zero-based and incremental, which essentially just works off last year. So most municipalities, us included, or regional districts, all use an incremental budgeting plan where we just look at last year, then try and quantify the changes. The mill rate is just the tax rate per thousand or per 100,000 because of our requisition is increasing at a much smaller rate than property taxes that forces the mill rate down. If you're the assessments are all for BC assessment, and if you actually talk to them, they'll just or they told me about a timing difference. So when the property market goes nuts, you have your large urban areas are the first to be affected. So that was Vancouver and such circa 2017 to 2018. Then those increase in properties then start bleeding out to the bigger municipalities. That's Nanaimo and Victoria, and then they slowly kind of creep out to the island. So it's just a shift from urban to urban to rural over time. And as far as the assessments and the relation, BC Assessment actually publishes 2 or 3 YouTube videos. They're about 3 to 4 minutes each, and I could send that out. But they do a really good job of explaining the relationship between assessments and taxes. So I'll forward those here at the end of the meeting.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
And so moving on, like I say, it's this slide essentially kind of highlights the shift in between areas. the next slide is the residential portion relative to the rest of the tax base. So area B and area C are primarily have a residential tax base, whereas area A and area D it's more diverse. And so for that, as you can see, for area A, for example, their residential portion alone went up 42%. And then the rest of the areas, or the entire other area, only increased at 21.8%. So yeah, this is what shifts taxes from managed forest and business and everything over to the residential side. And just to highlight that a bit in area A, these are the charts I produced in the budget. So I'll have one for all areas, but we'll just look at area A and D. If you add all these percentages up, that's how your tax base is split over. So those will total 100%. So last year in 2021, the residential component of area A paid 41% of all the of all the tax allocation, and then this year it's up to 48.1. So that's where you kind of see the shift. Their next biggest grouping is utilities, and then this year they're only paying 20%. So as you can see, over the past 5 years, there's been quite a shift into the residential just because it's growing at a much accelerated pace. Same thing for area D, but it's not as pronounced there. But one of their biggest groups is managed forest lands, which has is now only paying about 11.5% of their entire requisition, and the residence is up to 82.3. So this is going to translate when we look at everything is even if your taxes are the same or even a little bit lower, the residences or the households are going to see an increase while everybody else will see a decrease. So as far as the shared services, this is kind of how they're looking. We have Vancouver Island Regional Library is up a little bit, and then planning and the electoral area administration are both lower requisitions this year. We'll have more on this, but I just thought it was a good idea because community works funds always come up. So this is the your current balances as of last year plus the 2022 anticipated contributions. And this has everything fully fleshed in, so all the connected coast draws and capital draws and everything else. So we're looking to about forecast probably about to the level shown there. So if anything is added, that's going to be community works funds. You'll be able to have some options for financing.
So Mike, if you can just hold there. So go back to that slide. Maybe I can help out a little bit. Go back one. So the graph is maybe a little bit tougher to read, but after our commitments that you went too far. Trigger happy there. One more. There we go. So if you look at the chart on the bottom, after our current commitments that we've made in the electoral areas, those numbers at the bottom would be your remaining balance after commitment. So 740 in area. So all bills, all capital, all commitments paid out of gas tax. Your remaining budget's looking for 2022 reserves and gas tax, 740 area A, 280B, 1.5 in area C, and 2.4 in area D.
That's the 2022
Yeah.
balance that we'll be starting with.
Yeah, plus or minus
Is that
those.
correct?
Plus or minus. We just want to give you after all your commitments, what your balances will look like in 2022.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
so
everything everything that we committed in this last year will be taken off of in the last year, not this coming year.
Yeah, so let's say in area C, we have a commitment for last mile connected coast. So after that money comes out, you'll still be left with 1.5, sorry.
Sounds good, thank you.
So I have a question, Mr. Chair. Hello?
Go ahead, Brenda.
Yes, so on our gas tax funds, my primary interest as director is to use my gas tax funds for upgrading my water, Northern Area D water and Black Creek Oyster Bay water if it needs some gas tax funding to improve things. but I noticed throughout the last few years that parks and other functions at the regional district were taking my gas tax funds and using them to improve parks, and it wasn't really identified in any budgeting process. And I don't want that gas tax money to be used by other functions as a slush fund to finance their special projects. Like, I want that money to be held for Area D water to reduce the cost for all of Area D. And I don't really want to have it rated by any function unless it gets like electoral area approval to do so.
So, Mr. Chair, if I
So
might
is
jump
there,
in.
is
Yeah,
there a process
there
in
is a
place to do
process.
that?
There is, Mr.
Yeah,
Chair,
go ahead, Dave.
and I'll explain it. All commitments from electoral areas need to go through the electoral area, need to go through the budget, and need to have the EA director's consent. So any funds that have been spent in Area D have received the consent of the Area D director. Staff have zero ability to use that money as slush funds. So when you talk about commitments to parks, that is a commitment that you would have had endorsed and would have been in the budget. There is zero allocation outside that authority for staff.
Okay, so my overall direction would be that, and through the electoral areas committee, of course, that the gas tax funds that Area D holds is earmarked for water system improvements, not for other things. So I
Okay,
don't
Brenda,
want
I
to,
think
We have.
I don't want to pave a
I think-
parking lot down at Salmon Point. I don't want to pave a parking lot or do something that's
Brenda.
irrelevant to the water system.
So we have taken
Brenda, I
that
think
direction and the budget reflects that.
Okay, thanks.
I think Dave has made it clear that no funds will be used except with your approval. So
Yep.
it'll come to the EA and then it'll get your consent and signature.
Okay.
Or not. Is that
I'll-
correct,
I'll-
Dave?
Yes, and again, direction has been received from the area directors on that, and any commitments you see within the budget are at the direction or the approval of the EA director.
Okay, thank you. Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, just to add to that, for all other areas beside D, generally we try and use the most restrictive form of funding first. This is kind of the preference, but we're happy to change. We do have notes for Area D that is supposed to be limited to water. There are still a couple projects that are funded that are not water related, and that's just because they were passed from the board from years back. We've just been carrying them forward. So it's just two small parts. We have one in Hagel Creek, and then the others for that data collection. But yeah, from going forward, I have notes that only the water system should get drawn from there. So if anybody else has any restrictions they want to see on theirs, let me know. But generally, we just try and, like I say, use the most restrictive form of funding first. Okay.
Okay.
Have we got any, excuse me, Mr. Chair, may I speak?
Yes, go ahead.
Do we still have a deadline on when we have to spend our gas tax money before UBCM claws it back?
They have announced the still the 2024 date, but whether or not they claw it back, that's
Okay.
I think the general consensus is people think it's going to continue. So it's been, I think that we're on our fourth iteration of it. So it started back in the mid 2000s, I believe. So yeah,
Okay.
we kind of expect it to continue. So.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so these are the charts I had produced, and this focuses on the total requisition. So it's not a per household. I'll show those amounts in a minute, but so everything on the left-hand side, as far as the blue and green, is the total change we're expecting for this year. The chart over here in the gray is just the residential, or is just the assessment shift we've been talking about. So if we use 130 or EA administration as an example, that is a we're decreasing the total requisition. So Area A's portion is going down $8,900. $6,400 of that is simply due to due to the assessment shift. If that makes sense. And
Can I ask a question here, Jim?
Go ahead, Gerald.
Yeah, just on the above that chart there on the staff report in the green, you had total requisition. It looks like a negative 27,514. So is that, am I reading that correctly? If it wasn't
Yes.
for the tax shift, that would be a reduction in requisition for Area A.
Yeah, if I can jump in, Director Wally's exactly right on that, and that's kind of a point that we don't want to be lost on you. So I think Mike's got a couple slides. So the real challenge here this year with this tax shift is in Area A, in fact, the total requisition is going down, but you'll see when we flip to the average home, the taxes they'll pay are going up. There Mike plops it up right there. So that's really a dichotomy that's unusual that we don't normally see. When we lowered the overall requisition, you would anticipate that the per home cost would lower. But because of the shift, so in Area A we have $20-some thousand in a lower overall requisition. In fact, I think the per home that Mike has is going up $31.42. And of that $31.42, $25.64 of it is simply just because of the shift.
And the other little portion, what's that due to of the increase?
Are we talking the 130?
Well, the 31.42 is due to the shift, but for the
I know
28
that
to the shift, the extra $3 or $4, where does that come from if the requisition goes down?
well, that's just looking on the residential side. So
I think what he's trying to get at, so it's going up 31.42, 25.44 is due to the shift. So there's $6 remaining. So if you look at what Mike's got on his chart, the blue are the slight increases to the services based on a number of factors, again, overall assessments. And you'll see that, I'll call it $5 or $6 is due to the little increases again in certain services. So the Heritage Hall, the refuse,
Right.
911, that. So.
Okay, I understand that, but the little bit of confusion I still have is if the requisition, total requisition goes down 17,000, is that only for shared services we're talking about, or is that for all services?
that would be for all services.
So if total requisition goes down for all services, and I realize some of my individual services are going up, but if the total is going down, how does that give us $5 more on tax requisition?
Because it doesn't go down equally, right? Your net requisition could go down, but you've got, 20 different services in there.
I'm not sure if this is going to help, but yes, your total requisition falls 27,000.
Yeah.
And that's made up of these. So if you add all these blue bars together, you get the green. So for that $27,000 decline, your residences are paying $17,800 more.
Right.
Your utilities, your light industry, your business, they all pay less.
Okay.
And so,
Okay,
yeah.
Gotcha. All right. So is the same shift applied to the municipalities, or is this just like Tulare?
Well, sorry if I can jump in a little bit. The Area A and D have, I'm going to speak toward the significant slug, and that's private forest managed lands. Area A and D have more of that than B and C, and municipalities generally have far, far less. They might have almost none private managed forest lands within their boundaries. Take Gold River, for example. So they wouldn't see that shift because they just don't have private forest lands within their boundaries.
Right. Gotcha. Okay. And one more question. The requisitions here often are quoted as the value of the average household. Is that the same in each electoral area, and what is it?
Yeah. What we're trying to do is, again, to give people something, a relative benchmark, because again, everyone doesn't pay into every service, but you got to try and give some kind of level water. So we'll take the average home in Area A, and say, you know, this is what the average home will be. Of course, if you're less than the average home, you're less. If you're more, but we're trying to come up with some kind of number that people can relate to.
So what is the average home? How much?
Mike can know that.
In Area A, it's $363,724.
Okay, but in each electoral area would be different.
Yeah, so we have it goes from a high of in Area D of 683,000 down to a low in area in I guess Zabalas here at 106.
Right. Now, I like to compare mill rates with all the other electoral areas just to see what we're really paying. So if I took the requisition and divided by that 363,000, I could come up with a mill rate.
It's difficult
Yes,
because it is, but you're all have different services. Like Area D would have more services than you do. So I think that would be close, not exact though.
there's a chart of your mill rates there on the so let me get rid of this one.
Right.
You see, so yeah, your mill rate's actually going down somewhere between like 28% or something, and then that's just because the you know, it's measured in per thousand or per 100,000, and the households are just increasing at a faster rate than taxes, which just pushes mill rates down.
That's right. But see, the problem is I can't compare Area A with Area B, C, and D because all the house values are different for the average household. But mill rates is kind of an equal factor for everybody, so I can see if just overall how much taxes we're paying compared to the other electoral areas.
Yeah, I would say plus or minus. Of course, it depends on how many services that area has. So I think at a high level, you're fine with that, but it's not going to be an exact science because Area D will have many more services than Area A. So just adding up their requisition, dividing it by their average, that you know, again, they could have 10 more services than you. But I think you're onto it. Mike could probably work with you and come up with something that's relatively close, and you could post a number with an asterisk next to it.
It is probably worth mentioning, though, that for shared services, the tax rates will be identical between areas for those shared services alone.
Right.
So for planning, for example, the tax rate would be identical for residential throughout all 4 electoral areas for that service.
That's right. The only thing residents care about is what the bottom line is on their tax bill.
Exactly. So you know, this is what we're trying to highlight for you. Again, people though it gets complex, and so I think again the narrative here, especially A and D, is you know, $31.26 of that due to this tax shift from private forest managed lands.
Right.
Okay, and then moving on, this is the.
May I ask
Go ahead.
I had a question, Mr. Chair. Can I ask it?
Go ahead, Brenda. I thought that before your hand.
Yeah, like Area D has about $1.3 billion in managed forest, and our managed forest component went down and shifted over to the residential by $176,000. That compares to B and C, which only shifted about, I think it was 15,000 down in their managed forests. Like we look like we took a big hit in moving the 176,000 that came off of managed forests into residential, but really because of the size of our managed forest areas, it's not really having an impact like it is in B and C, because you don't have as much to play with. The Vancouver Island Regional Library, the question I had about that was, there's variable weights put on each of the areas regarding how much they're contributing to the library system. And I'm wondering if that borrowing bylaw, the 14.7 million that the board passed to borrow 14.7 million to build a new Campbell River Library, is that still in that mix? Are we paying anything towards a debt
No.
that we've taken out, or?
No, we haven't taken out any
Okay.
debt. It's just the authority that
It's
we
a
have.
per- Okay,
And
so-
no money's been borrowed. So there's nothing
Okay.
in that 15 million that reflects the number from the library.
Okay, so I noticed, like, I don't know if it's standard practice, but I noticed that the library applies their levies to the regional districts based on 50% population and 50% assessment. So in each of the areas, I guess with the assessments being a little wonky, I guess they're all going to have different amounts.
Yes.
Like I would have thought that the library system would be charging the whole Strathcona Regional District the formula that they use, which is 50% population, 50% assessment onto their levies,
So what Mike's
onto
trying
the
to,
amounts they raise.
yeah, so what Mike's has, and he has it here for the EAs, and it'll be available for the munis and the EAs at the draft budget. He's got a nifty little graph here. If you look at the blue, so just talking about area, is this area B or D,
B.
Mike? B. So
You
this,
want B.
this is B. So you see in area B, the increase for the library is 6291. I'm certain when we look at area D, the number will be different based on assessments and population. So
That's $6
no,
and
six, the
29.
total increase requisition.
Oh, I see,
is
6,000 comma, okay.
over the electoral area B. So these identify in each electoral area that blue sliver of what the increase has been. So again, in area B, it's $6,000. Area D, it will be something different.
Okay, thank you. Mike, could I just ask a question? If I think in past years, we've always included a little slip, a little flyer kind of thing, one page, sort of explaining things to people. Will we be doing that again this year with the tax notices when they come out?
Yeah, previously we used to mail them, and then I think the last couple of years we just posted them on our website. So yeah, we can do it. Most of it's actually explained in these budget charts. So, but
Okay.
Yeah.
I think the printed word showing up at the same time as the bill is probably the preferable way as far as I'm concerned. Because a lot of people won't necessarily go to the website to gasp at their tax bill.
I think it's good input, and
Yeah.
as Director Anderson mentioned, when we see the draft budget, I think it would be appropriate at that time to kind of discuss how we want to message, because it could be quite different, because the munis have, because of their lack of private forest managed land, their increases are much less than the EAs because they don't have that shift. So I think many of them are seeing an actual reduction in per average home. So let's hold tight on that when we see the draft budget, because they're going to be two different messages, I believe, one from the EAs and one from the munis, because it's not really the same song sheet.
Okay, the other point I just wanted to make is there possibly a 25 word or less rationale for why BC Assessment decided to do this shift on forest lands. Is that contrary to what Brenda says? We do have a lot of forest land, private forest land in Area C.
Yeah, and I think what we'll work on, because we anticipated it, some kind of messaging, and we'll have a little more information prepared, I think, of the draft budget too, because I believe, as we're talking now, that's kind of the messaging that we want to get out to folks, is that, it's out of the EA director's hands, a lot of this, because it's a shift, so you shouldn't take the heat for some of it.
Yeah, it'd be nice. It's kind of like the Bart Simpson joke of "I didn't do it," and we can only say that so many times. Okay, go ahead, Mike.
I think Director Anderson had her hand up there. Again.
I had
Oh,
a question
sorry.
about this slide before we move on, if I might.
yeah,
Sure.
I'm just noting, Mike, that the numbers here are a bit different from what was available in anticipation of this meeting. On the agenda, what I'm seeing on what I downloaded here was estimated tax requisition per average household is just over 1,000. And the change was $50 per home, a shift of 27. And I'm seeing here yours is 36. Is yours more updated?
No. I found it distracting I'm trying to show two things. So the $36,000 is your total requisition. On a per home basis, it's $50 per home. So if we were just to look at all the residential stuff, everything is up, and it primarily due to the shift.
So I think.
But yeah,
so
Mike's,
area B, the SRD is taxing $36,000 more in its budget for area B than we did last year.
total,
which
correct.
equates to $50 more per home, 27 of which is due to the shift, and the remaining
Correct.
22 is due to just increased revenue needed.
Correct. So yeah, you're exactly right. So then if you look at, let's talk about that extra $22. So if you look at the Cortez Island fire, up significantly, 18. I don't know what 18,000 translates into dollars. I think Mike said maybe $8 or $10. So each of those little blue slivers will add up to that.
Yeah.
So again, apologize if I repeat myself, but so you looked at Gerald's area, which is, you know, the most unusual, that he looks at his total requisition, and Brenda's will even look more awkward. Total requisition going down, and the burden to the individual average homeowner going up. So in area B, we have the requisition net, as you pointed out, correct, increasing 36,000, which means $50 a home, plus or minus half of that due to the tax shift, and then the remaining half due to those little blue slivers you see there, most significantly being Cortez fire.
Got it. And then my last question, Mike, you had mentioned average home values. Do you have those available that aren't here in the presentation somehow?
Yeah, I compute them every year. I didn't include them, so I could send those out after the meeting for all the different areas.
Mike has got, this is just a side tidbit that may be interesting to everyone. Mike produces some great statistics, but and you'll see it in the draft budget that may be interesting to all of you. And it was in every single electoral area. He'll break up the value of properties and the number of them, you know, from 0 to 100,000, then 100,000 to 200,000, and how many in there. The largest grouping of properties in every electoral area was $1 million or more. That was the largest grouping of properties in, I think he's got 10 or 12 categories, and the largest is $1 million or more homes in every EA.
And many of these homes were bought for $30,000.
Yeah, no, I'm just, I agree with you. I'm just saying some really interesting statistics that when I looked at that, I was shocked at how every electoral area, the largest single grouping of homes was $1 million or more. So there he goes. Mike's got area B at almost $600,000.
So we can all throw affordable housing into the wind. There's no such thing. None of it's affordable. Okay, Brenda, you have your hand up. I just want to note directors. I'd like to note to directors first, we are halfway through the meeting, and I don't know if we're halfway through the material. So
quick question I want to ask is, what are the 4 services that Managed Forest would contribute to? Like, there's library, there's those hospital district services. Strathcona Gardens should be applied in Area D to hospital district, so that would include Managed Forest. What are and electoral area administration? Are those, which are the 4 services that Managed Forest does pay into?
Managed Forest will pay into everyone that is for the entirety of Area D. So if you look on these ones, there's this little tilde mark that denotes a defined service area. So for Area D, like your water doesn't share. But anything applied to your entire area, everybody in that classification will have to pay. So that includes.
Okay, all of them. Okay, what were the 4 things then? You mentioned there's 4 shared services that get affected by this tax shift. What are those? The shared services.
Yeah, well, the 4, I guess, would be the
EA administration,
yeah,
Planning,
EA
parks.
planning.
planning, library. What else?
But
and the,
even though it's not a shared service, parks is your
Liquid
entire
waste.
electoral area, so.
Yeah.
There's things that are
Okay.
not shared service that encompass your whole electoral area as well.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll have a look when we get to your slide there. So
Okay, I'll shut up and let you carry on.
yeah, I guess the only point for area B is we have for the refuse collection, $5 increase per household on the fee side, but we can talk about that more about that when the budget comes. So as far as area C, same thing here. It's a big shift of $58,000 increase. If you want to look at the per home, you're looking at about $30 per home, and then the majority of that is due to the shift.
So again, just to interpret what Mike's got, we're net requisition increase to area C, 58,000. That translates into $29 a home, of which 22 of it is 100% of the tax shift.
So we're talking like what, $7, $6 on something is only attributable to the increase in need for services
Correct, yeah.
from requisition. This is, this is just crazy.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but I must have a metal plate in my head or something that just
Yeah.
slides down and says, this does not compute.
No, and I appreciate it. And I just want to throw in a bit of an editorial. This is why we go through the process of, adding input to the budget, taking your direction, giving staff's business cases, and then throwing that all into the mixing bowl and presenting it to you, because we don't know until we get this information from BC Assessments and have year ends what it's going to look like. So, just moving forward in future years, when you budget in regional districts, because all services have to be, their budgets have to balance. You don't know what that's going to be until you have year ends and assessments numbers and what happens. So we're just kind of anticipating, discussing, talking about things we might like and like to do. But until the rubber hits the road in January, we don't really know. And that's why this meeting and the draft budget is important, because before this happened a month ago, we had no idea, right? We're projecting numbers and we're rubbing our hands together saying, oh gosh, we're going to be able to give $5 back a home in area D. This is really great news. And then we get this in January and go, oh, that's not so great. So So I think it's really valuable that you're seeing this, and why nothing really tangible can be discussed or implemented until we look at these things, because I'm sure they're having, running through your heads, impact to maybe things that you were even thinking about today, going, well, I don't want to add to that because, these people are getting stuck with, $30 more a home that I didn't anticipate.
Well, I guess my comment would be if we didn't increase our needs by requisition for each service or whatever in the amount of about $650 per home, we would still be raising our taxes.
Yeah, and again, I hate to pick on her. I'm not really picking on Director Lee, but hers is worse. We're going to give back money. And again, I don't mean to build her anxiety, but when Mike flicks the next one, it's really cruel about the shift, about giving back and when it's going up.
It's crazy. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so I guess for area D, we got taxes are overall going down, but if you look at it on a per resident basis, yeah, it's going up, and then that's as you can see, the shift is actually outweighing the tax decrease. The only one spot where that changes for Strathcona Gardens, because that's just shared between Cam River and Area D. So yeah, that's why it's a positive number there.
So again, Strathcona Gardens, the number's so small there, it's incidental. But so Director Lee, just to make sure that you're interpreting this correct, your net requisition to your folks is dropping almost $90,000. So we would have given money back. The increase to your per average home is $67. 100% of that, 100% is due to the tax shift.
110%
Yes,
looks like.
yes, no, you're absolutely,
115%.
yes.
So that's due to
So-
the tax shift. But you know, people in area, what I've been telling everyone in Area D that questions their assessments went up on my house 45%. Some people got 48% increase in their assessment. From here all the way to Port McNeill. Port McNeill got a 45% increase in assessments, all due to this managed forest shift. And so what I've been telling all my residents is that if everyone in Area D living in a house, owning a house, if everyone gets the same percentage assessment increase, approximately 45 to 50% increase, the taxes are not going to go up because everybody is paying the same assessment. You know, everybody's got an increased assessment. And so we only need a certain amount of dollars for our 43 services. So we're going to lower the tax rate. I mean, if the assessments go way up unreasonably, the tax rate should go way down. And we should end up with, you know, a pretty livable situation. I'm
Sure.
not expecting my tax bill to go up hardly at all because my own home is less than the average home in Area D is 683,000. And so
I
you
don't
know,
mean to be
a lot of people won't pay an increase.
So I don't mean to be
Go
the
ahead,
bearer of
Dave.
bad news, but this is not a reflection of the assessment increases at all. This is one group, meaning private managed forest, paying less than you. So I can assure you, you will pay more this year. So what we're trying to represent is if you live in that average home, you are going to pay an extra $67, and it is
Yep,
due to the shift.
exactly.
So I think your narrative is, and this is what we'll work on in the messaging that Director Anderson talked about, is that you've actually lowered the net requisition, but because private managed forest is paying less, the average home is going to pay $67 more. They will see that increase 100%.
Yeah.
So what the province has done to us basically is if a director does a good job of keeping the tax requisition as low as possible, even lowering it more than normal, it makes absolutely no difference whatsoever because the province still has control of shifting the tax burden from one classification to another, therefore making it look really bad for the elected officials within the rural areas. And on the, that was the reason I asked for a few minutes ago, a 25 word or less rationale from BC Assessment. Is this the forest industry whining about they're paying too much taxes or what? Because as I understand it, and Gerald, you could probably clarify it, I don't believe that forest companies, private or otherwise, pay a heck of a lot of money for the amount of wood they take out of the forest. So, somebody's being favored here, and it's not us as individual homeowners. It's forestry operations. Is that correct?
I can't comment, and Gerald will know more about, you know, what forestry pays in taxes, but the first part of your comments were unfortunately 100% correct, yeah. And Area D, I think out of the four EAs magnifies that the best, whereas if you asked me in December what we were looking at, I'd have said, Director Lee, we're looking to lower your taxes, and then January, have to add $60 a home. So yeah, that's the fact.
From now on, Dave, maybe that's a lesson to the regional district senior staff. Don't tell us anything in December and wait until January so that we don't have this gigantic disappointment.
I don't think it's so catastrophic in Area D because we lost $176,000 of managed forest taxes and shifted over to residential. But when you look at the tax base in Area D and you spread it across, I mean, it only comes out to that $67.81, you know, like $50 in Area D in a requisition costs a householder an average of about $10. It's not a big deal. It's not. We're making it
Okay,
to
well,
be
if you're
a
happy-
much bigger deal than it is.
Okay, perfect. If you're happy, Director Lee, we're happy.
I'm not
Okay.
panicking about it. I think it's going to affect everybody equally.
Brenda, I think what you're missing though is what you're seeing in the fuchsia colored print
Yeah,
is what you're going to see per home. It's not $50, it's $67.87 per home,
yeah.
average home. Yes.
10 or
So-
15 bucks difference from last year. That's not significant
Well, then if that's not
considering.
a problem, if that's not a problem in Area D, more power to you.
Yeah, it's not significant
Go ahead.
considering the amount of taxes we pay.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I just add, yeah, if you want to look at it, it's, yeah, you know, the value of the home in Area D went up 190,000 and the taxes went up $70. So it's, you know, if you look at it that way, it's pretty good. But no, essentially that's the end of my presentation. I just kind of wanted to explain how the charts work and are good to go. So.
All right, well, that's it again. If,
Special
thanks, Mike. So I think that was great discussion. Hopefully everyone learned something about the taxes and tax shifts. And so I think at this point we have a bit of a blank canvas. Again, we've been through several iterations of this. You've seen the results of the impacts of this. And I guess the floor is kind of open now about items that still remain on your list that you might want to see some adjustments before we hit the print on the draft budget for the board on February 9th. And so we've kind of scheduled this meeting. We forced you into this time slot because it would give us enough time to implement any comments you have, produce an agenda and the draft budget for the 9th. So Mr. Chair, I'll leave it up to you. Open the floor, and we have our pens ready. And if you have any comments, additions, modifications to things you've identified, we're happy to hear them.
I've got some items, Jim, please.
Yeah, is that your hand? Because I've just got a circle with a +9 in it, and your hand is now up.
That's me, okay.
Go ahead.
So some real simple questions here for Mike. I think there's one tiny little typo error in the staff report where you have estimated tax requisition per household, and you've got that Sayward and then Cayucot for 2021 and then 2020. That's probably meant to be 2022 and 2021. Is that right?
Yeah, you'd be correct on that. I'll make sure that's fixed.
There's a typo there. Okay, now just going through some other items of budget on this is on the detailed pages down below, but on page 21, the general reserve fund revenue fund for wharves. Now this is the Area C budget item. What's required to get that out of the general fund and get it into the Area C?
I might be able to answer that, Mr. Chair. So we had a resolution to create a wharf service, and we will be bringing that back to the board shortly, and then any funds in that will be transferred to that War of Service.
Thank you. Okay, that's that one. And then on page 42, Seward Valley Fire, there's just an item there for repairs and building maintenance at 54,000. And I wondered, do we have some specifics of exactly what we're going to fix there?
I can answer that for you. Sean would actually be the best. I'm not sure if he's in attendance today, but we've been carrying forward a maintenance item for quite some time, waiting for future guidance on that. He went out and got a grant, and then part of that grant money is going towards improvements at the Seward Fire Hall. So what I've done is moved the amount of the money we've been carrying forward. I just kind of tuck that away to the reserve. Sean's going to spend this grant money, and then I think he's going to come up with a plan from there.
Perfect. Okay, I'll talk to Sean later. He can tell me what it is, just out of curiosity. And then on page 106, Community Hall Cayucot, we've got 47,000. Is that suggesting we have some intention to actually build something in 2022, or just in case?
Yeah, I think that's been just carried forward for the last couple of years. I think Annika would be the one to address her plans there.
Alrighty. And then the last one I had, page 170, Community Hall Seward transfer reserves, 5,500 out of professional fees, 7,000. And I wondered what that was for.
Sorry, what was the service number again?
This is Community Hall Seward on page 107, the Heritage Hall. We're transferring out of reserves 5,500 and then other professional fees 7,000. So there's probably some little item that we're going to work on there. I just wondered what it was.
Just look that up here. So yeah, we've been carrying forward a building condition assessment for 5,500 for that, and then more or less just maintaining the tax requisition.
Okay. Now, just one item on this Heritage Hall. The president of the local association has been telling me that they're looking at a propane generator for when the power goes out, which it's gone over 20 times this last month and a half, to kind of have backup power so the pipes don't freeze, this and that. Do we have money in reserves that would cover that? I would guess it, be 15, 20,000 or something for a generator of that nature.
Yeah, we have money for that, and that would also qualify for community works funds if you're interested.
Yeah, I would be. Okay, that's all I had. Thank you very much.
Director Wally, did you want us then to earmark some additional either gas tax funds for community hall reserves for that? We can make a simple change. That won't have a requisition change at all. Do you want us to identify that in the budget?
I can do that, yes, in a couple of weeks. She's getting quotes at the moment, so I'll just wait till we get a quote and then I'll have a more specific number for you.
Okay, it's easy for us to just allocate a number. We don't spend it, goes back into gas tax, but it's
sure.
probably easy for, if we just put 20,000 allocated gas tax, if it's 10, doesn't matter, money just goes back, but we can then put it into the budget for the 9th.
Thank you, that'd be good.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Gerald, you still got your hand up, you want to?
We're down here.
Okay, Brenda,
I wanted to check, Gerald just twigged my memory about the 660,000 that we need to have available in Area D to match any provincial grant we get on the universal metering project. Do we have that earmarked from gas tax funds?
Director Lee, so
do we have to do the same thing Gerald just did and move them from gas tax to the water funds to be able to do that?
We within the system, we have enough in reserve Area D water, so we can't use gas tax because it's a double dip.
Oh, I see. Okay.
But
we have the money.
Yes, we do have the money. So what you've seen in the budget that Mike's just produced there includes an amount of money that we have in reserve for that contribution. So what you're seeing there for Area D is all in. We got it covered.
Okay, thank you.
okay, Gerald, could I ask you where you were seeing the wharves number, what page was
In
that?
EA admin, it would be, because there's not a WARVS function, everything in WARVS is in EA admin. And when we create
Okay, where-
It's on page 1.
130.
Page what?
130,
130, okay, sorry, gotta scroll through
sorry.
a bunch here.
Oh, sorry, function 130. I don't know, Gerald, what page did you have there?
Page 21.
Say again?
21.
21, I gotta go backwards. Okay, 21,
Up a couple more pages, Tom. There you go.
okay, so 21. Wharves, wharves, where do I see wharves? I don't see wharves. Oh yeah, there they are, wharves. So this money, this is federal government money, but there isn't a requisition, right?
No, there's no requisition. It's just the Transport Canada money that we would shift into out of here into the WARPS function when we create it here in next few months.
Okay, so this isn't costing any electoral area
No,
anything.
no.
Okay,
Just potential
just
liability.
want to make sure you do that. What's that?
Just potential liability, that's all.
Yeah, okay, well, we'll put up the double tier fee at Port Neville Dock. We're residents of Seward Valley. Okay, so anything else from anybody?
Well,
Anybody
when the
that-
worst,
Oh.
when the worst, I have something. When the worst function was established at the Comox Strathcona district and they applied for all that federal transfer money to take care of the docks, the Sayward dock, the Sayward dock was part of that function. So I assume that part of the federal money, 3.2 million or something that was bequeathed to the regional district would go back to Sayward for their dock, right? It's not all going to be Quadra Islands and Discovery Islands, I mean. There
That's
are
your
some other
assumption,
facilities.
Your assumption is wrong. Sorry, Brenda. But
Okay,
first, that dock has nothing to do with anything. The only docks we're talking about under the federal program that is under the SRD are Port Neville, Owen Bay, Surge Narrows, and that's it. It's 3 docks. And those all have federal allocations per dock. Money stays with the dock. So whatever's in the account for that dock, that's what can be spent. And when that runs out, then it has to go to a requisition to Area C if we establish a WARFs function.
I was pretty sure that Donna, who used to be on Sayward Council, sat on the Wharfs Committee representing Sayward for the dock
Totally
at
different,
Sayward.
totally different situation. It's not even the same animal.
Okay, I'll let it go. It's not Area D anyway, so.
Yeah, nothing to do
It's
with
not
it.
SR. Okay, Noba.
Thank you. Mike sent me at my request the gas tax breakdown for Area B, and that was really useful. Just in future presentations, if that could be included for each respective area, I think that would help here. So I'm going to be referring to something he sent me that we don't have in front of us. My apologies. But wanting clarification, Mike, from the email you sent yesterday with that great summary. My understanding is that 435,000 and change is for the Connected Coast contribution, and 135,000 you said is the current budgeted draw for internally constructed projects. Can you tell me what that means? Is that those projects below the Quas Bridge, the Quas Capital, the Trails Network? Is that those things added together?
If you're
And
talking,
you're
Mike,
muted
you're
if you
muted,
speak.
yeah.
Oh, sorry about that again. Yeah, you're correct. So the those are the projects we've been carrying forward for a little while.
Oh, I see. So the 135, 770 below matches. Okay, so
Yeah.
after we do those projects, we still have 280,000 and change in the bank. Is that correct?
Yeah, assuming the projects get 100% spent.
Understood. Okay, so knowing that, I have some questions and direction for Cortez Fire and Area B Parks. Is Aniko with us on the call?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hey, thank you. So I'm finally caving to your desire to actually replace the Surge Narrows Bridge in Quas Park. I can't seem to figure out how to use gas tax for a whole lot else. So we had allocated, is that the 32,000 or the 40,000? 40,000, I believe.
The total allocation was 40,000. We've since spent some on the design, so the carry forward into 2022 will be 32.
I see. So my question through to Annika, if I might, is how much would I need to increase that by for your estimation to complete that project, given prices today?
Thank you for the chair. I'd have to go back and look at the numbers. I don't have them sitting right in front of me. So if you just give me a moment.
Sure.
A further consideration though for you, Director Anderson, is the fact that we're actually in a position to have to give priority to capital projects for 2022, given a recent assessment on the Carrington Bridge as well, which is actually in a worse condition than the Quas Bridge is. And we would be recommending to the director that if in fact one of the bridges is replaced at this time, that we proceed with prioritizing Carrington first. But I just need to go and pull my numbers for that. If you could just give me a moment.
Sure, that would be fine. And so then the other Quas Capital project was that so the wetland walking floating bridge situation replacement?
That's correct, which we've done a little bit of work on, but there's still some outstanding.
Okay, so I'm interested in potentially funding what is needed for parks capital out of that. So moving on then to fire, while Aniko gets those numbers, function 250. I was interested in in putting funds from gas tax into water storage tanks. It seems like Mike has said that's not within the purview of gas tax. So he suggested potentially transferring 10,000 out of operating reserve into the capital reserve for the purpose of acquiring water storage tanks. And Mike, if you still think that is within our capacity, I would like to move that.
I think that would be Sean setting all that up. I could put 10,000 in the budget.
No, that's what I'm just saying. If you think there's a 10,000 in the capital reserve that we could transfer, sorry, in the operating reserve that we could transfer, Sean is in support of the project.
Yeah, I can set that up.
Okay, so I would like then to move, do you want me to put it in the chat?
No, that's okay.
I got it.
Yeah, we're just
So to
taking notes.
move-
It's good.
10,000 transferred from operating reserve into the capital reserve from Cortez Fire Function 250 for the purpose of acquiring water storage tanks. And then based on the discussion that just happened with Gerald around a generator at the fire hall, I know the top priority for the fire department here has been backup power source. At present, their diesel and generator only lasts, I think, 4 or 5 days. And it also powers the ambulance and the seniors village and the clinic. I have previously said that I didn't think that gas tax would be appropriate because it would be embedded into their building. But given what I just heard from Gerald, I would happily set aside, say $30,000 in support of that project from gas tax, subject to staff coming forward with a way of doing that well, but that the money was there to support it.
Yeah, I can make that allocation in the fire emergency response. That's the one spot where UBCM has recently relaxed the rules a bit. So if you're actually doing work on a fire hall within the property bounds of the fire hall, it's now allowed. So I think that we can get away with. I'll talk to the UBCM anyway, just to confirm it. Just anytime it gets to fire halls and emergency response, they're a little bit more rules than the other categories. So
Right. So yeah, I'm picking a number a bit out of a hat here, but given that we've got 280 unallocated, I would happily throw 30,000 at that right now. And then as staff come forward with more details, if more or less is needed, we can make that adjustment over time. And so when Aniko comes back, or Aniko, do you have numbers?
Through the chair, yes, I do. Thank you through the chair to the director. A like for like replacement for Carrington, which is not recommended at this time, given the fact that the underside of the structure continually is wetted, is approximately $65,000. What the engineer is proposing is that we raise the structure in elevation to alleviate the wetting of the structure and increase its overall life expectancy. That has a estimated cost of about $75,000, which is more or less similar to where we were at, what was that, maybe 2 years ago for the Quorum Bridge. So we're assuming that the replacement of either of these bridges would cost approximately the same at about $75,000. So it would be our recommendation that we prioritize the Carrington Bridge replacement for 2022 with a budget of $75,000 and add costs in as a placeholder, potentially unfunded at this time for 2023, and revisit that at next year's financial planning sessions. Thank you.
Okay, I would support that only with the giggle that I think it was made with a chainsaw and some logs and volunteers over a weekend, the existing one that's worth 65,000, because I don't think it's a bridge in our asset roster. But I would support that $75,000 to replace the Carrington Bridge out of gas tax reserves. Leaving, I think, the other 32 and 40 just where it is, because there's still $250,000 to play with there. And then I'd just like to note, I don't have any numbers, but I don't want to get in trouble later bringing forward a new project that I didn't mention at budget, that I have been in discussion with City West about using some gas tax funds to put little microcell repeater signals along some of the roadways here to improve cell signal to motorists. And they indicated, this is super preliminary, but they indicated they might technically be able to do that, but probably don't have funds to support it. I have no idea what that would come in at. I can throw a random placeholder number in if you like now for budgeting purposes, or bring you something more substantive when I have it.
I think throwing a number in there, I've never heard of it, but great idea. So I would do that. I would throw a number in there, and then let's remember too that we have a partnership agreement that is going to return funds back to the community. So what I would say is let's put a placeholder of gas tax. There's no harm in that. Just come up with a number, and then ideally we will take revenues from that service, and that's kind of the intent, is to continue to use those revenues to build out communications, telecom, connectivity, and then ideally we wouldn't have to spend any gas tax on that.
I got a quick input there. Someone for, I believe it was Area A, we're trying to get some cell repeaters along the highway. So I talked with UBCM about it. It does not qualify for their broadband capacity, even though a cell phone can connect to the internet. It's a cell repeater. It's not broadband, so it's not eligible for that category.
Let's still, again, just earmark some gas tax. I'll chat with City West, find out an amount of money, and then, look at how we can fund that. But I think identifying the project does no harm. It's a good idea.
Okay, well, whatever you think, 50, say 50,000, just so that it's not considered a new project later,
Yeah,
we
no,
can
that's a good
increase or
idea.
decrease funds associated. Okay, so that's all I've got for the gas tax. A note here from Mike having to do with Area B parks. He says we should discuss this. So what was I saying? Okay, we have funds in the Parks Acquisition Reserve. And in my one-on-one back in the fall, I had said that a real priority was supporting the acquisition, not the actual purchase price, but supporting the process and the acquisition of the lands known as the Children's Forest adjacent to Carrington Park from Mosaic Island Timberlands. And so I just wondered if we needed some kind of resolution on the books or whether that should be done in camera. I'm happy to put a resolution forward here simply to give permission to staff to draw funds from the acquisition reserve in support of those negotiations and land valuation. I have something written if this is an appropriate time.
I think it would be inappropriate to identify a specific property, as it would be, I'm assuming it would be some kind of property negotiation. If you want to earmark some money in general, I think that would be fine.
Okay. I would then earmark $50,000 from the Area B Parks Acquisition Reserve to be made available to support acquisition negotiations of parks on Cortez.
That sounds fine to me.
And then my final parks note here, pull it up, was a shift from reserve contribution. So at present, there's 2 reserve contributions into line 617,519 and 617,485. I believe that's capital. Sorry, I just need to bring this up. Could we go to the VADM detail on 617?
What page, please?
Sorry, I don't know. It's function 617.
Scroll way down.
Yeah, right near the bottom.
Sorry, I just had a quick point too, as far as earmarking the funds. Technically, every dollar in that land acquisition is earmarked for land acquisition. So we put in the 50,000 that shows the draw out of it, but
Sure.
yeah.
Just so you don't specifically need board resolution to begin. Okay, so right near the very bottom of the first page there, there's a contribution to capital machine works of 15,000 and a contribution to appropriated surplus of 27,000 and change. I'm wondering about the advisability of putting both of those taking those contributions out of those respective places and putting them both into the land acquisition line is it 488? I don't know why we would need contributions to appropriate surplus and capital works.
So appropriated surplus, that sounds benign to me, yeah. I'm not sure though what the staff have earmarked for capital equipment, because money can be used for different purposes. So, I'm not sure. Like, appropriate surplus, let's say, can be used for requisition blending, if you will. Capital machinery is for, asset management replacement of things. So often
Yeah.
we'll put money into different pots. So I'm assuming that staff would put money into capital machinery equipment because, they have some kind of asset management replacement plan that they're going to need money for. Aniko or somebody else can speak to that. Appropriated surplus, yeah, that's can be used for a number of different things, and yes, we can likely consolidate that. I just have a question about the machinery and
Oh,
equipment.
please, would love to hear to Aniko, because what I'm wanting to do is throw the gas tax funds at the capital works for parks, rather than having them come out of requisition, and be able to put those requisition amounts into land acquisition reserve.
Thank you. I will defer some of this to Mike. I didn't actually come up with the specific numbers for the contribution to capital works machinery and equipment. So at this point, I don't have anything specifically earmarked for those funds. And it's my understanding that with respect to 519 appropriated surplus, that was just to balance the requisition. But Mike, if you had anything further to offer on 485, I would welcome that.
Yeah, you're correct. So the contribution to capital reserve, anything with infrastructure, any service with infrastructure, we try and take a little bit of capital reserve every year just to build it up. This is going to fund all your bridges and everything else. Everything else is pretty much a operating reserve, and that can be used for to smooth the requisition, as Dave says. It's going to pay for any of your studies. It'll pay for anything else. And then, like I say, if the capital gets overdrawn, you can technically fund increased transfers in there out of the operating reserve. The one thing you need capital for is if we do get any future grants for parks that are federally funded, we can't double dip. So it's good to have a bit of a capital reserve. And then, of course, some of the stuff won't qualify for federal programs. So you're going to need any balances there. I'm currently looking at, I think we're in the $100,000 range for the operating reserve, and then capital is about 60,000. And then, but as you know, for parks, that'll get ate up pretty soon with the next project.
And the appropriated surplus, can that be used throughout the year for acquisition purposes if need be, at direction of the board?
Well, I think so hearing what Mike and Aniko said, I think if you want to build up your parks acquisition, you certainly could redirect the appropriated surplus to that. I don't see any harm in that. I agree with Aniko and Mike about capital reserves because they're more specific to things that can and cannot be funded. But I don't see why any reason you couldn't take the appropriated surplus and redirect that to parks acquisition.
Okay, well, I would like to direct as such then that the contribution to appropriated surplus of 27,800 be redirected to land acquisition. And I'm also happy to put in the 2023 budget, topping up the Quorum bridge replacement to the 75,000 required. So there's not concern about needing the capital works fund for that.
I think we're doing gas tax for Quaz, aren't we?
Sorry, what did I say?
I don't think you did.
Okay, so yeah, I just said a few minutes ago, 75,000 for the Carrington Bridge replacement out of gas tax. But what I heard Aniko say was there was also desire for 75,000 in 2023 for the Quorum Bridge replacement, and I would happily put that in the budget from gas tax so as to diminish concern around the lack of capital works reserve.
Yeah, that's fine.
Do you need resolutions to support any of those things?
No, that's good. We're going to take direction from here and embed this stuff in the draft budget for the 9th.
Great. Okay, so then my only other point had to do with planning. It's just a simple matter. Function 500, line 387, professional fees. I don't know if someone wants to bring that up. It was $129,000 in professional fees. And I just wondered if that would be available at the direction of ESC and the board to support contracting out some specific reviews of long-range planning, given that we haven't funded that long-range planning position. Would those professional fees allow for that? And might it be advisable to speak to us about what those fees would be allowed for and either increasing them or transferring from other sections of the budget to support a little bit of contracted long-range planning update.
So first, I think it would be appropriate for Aniko to speak to what she has identified for that 129,000.
Can I jump in there? I'm not sure if you have those numbers, Aniko, but I have them here at the ready if needed.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I don't have the total in front of me, but it's my understanding that the majority of those that fund is or the majority of those funds are already allocated for specific projects within the 500 function, coming from the area CICSP, the transportation grant work, the housing needs report, and a flood assessment report. So Mike, if you could advise as to the detail you may have on what out of that fund may not be specifically allocated for one of our projects that we're carrying forward from this year, that might be helpful for the director and for discussion purposes. Thanks.
Yeah, we have 107,000 of it is all tied up with projects. We have a $22,000 base amount, which Aniko's has internally, I guess, earmarked for anything she's working on this year. And that's for all our OCPs, bylaw, any of the IT consulting and his projects.
So my question through to my colleagues, and I don't expect they'll be supported, but I have to ask, is there any appetite in increasing that line item slightly to allow some professional support for updates to, one of our projects this coming year in the absence of a staff person to do it?
If I could just interrupt here for 1 second. Aniko, I believe in your summary there, you mentioned 20,000 or whatever, or you mentioned the ICSP as being funded from this. The ICSP funding was all gas tax, as I understood it, $70,000.
Yeah,
So
if
why
I
would
could
that
jump
be
in. Sorry. Yeah, if I could jump in, that is funded for a variety of sources. Like I say, 22,000 is funded by essentially tax requisition, and then yeah, we have the 17,000, but the revenue would be in the revenue section. This is the total expense for several different projects. So like I say, about 107,000 of that is all grant funded, and then 22 is the base.
Yeah, thank you through
Okay.
Chair, if I may. The majority of those funds that we said were previously allocated are actually coming from grant funding, so they weren't requisition funds.
Thank you.
So I
Okay,
think,
nobody would argue that?
well, I think Director Anderson's point then is there doesn't, in the existing numbers, there isn't money to reallocate to anything else. So happy to increase that line item if there's support from the A directors.
I don't support it.
No, I think that in light of the assessment shift, I think we need to be careful. And I have some suggested cuts to the Area D budget as well that I'd like to put forward to address the tax shift.
Okay, and before you do, Brenda, could I just have a quick moment here?
Sure, you're next.
Before we run out of Dave, I'm not sure if I just can't remember. I'm sorry. Whether we decided that we were going to talk about the Harper Road trail funding at this meeting, or if that's going to come at a later meeting, like another regular electoral area meeting, and whether or not we can do that, since it is a budget item. It's basically supposed to be all gas tax, but can we do that later, or do we have to do it today?
Well, what we're doing today, again, is the final round of taking input for next year's budget. So if it has, I think we've been making good progress here. These items we can make adjustments to the budget, but I'm not sure what your comments are to that. Are you looking to add money to something, take away money, something. I don't think the purpose of this meeting is to dissect where money has been spent. We either have it in the budget, we don't. You want to either increase an item or decrease an item, but I don't think we're here to kind of dissect where money's been spent on specific projects. Having said that, I don't know what your viewpoint is on this item, what you want to do with it, but, you know, happy to hear your comments.
Like, it is dissection.
Yeah,
No,
I don't
it
think it's
is
appropriate. I don't think it's appropriate for sitting here to dissect line items in the budget. That's not really the purpose of this. If you want to offline chat with Aniko, Mike, you know, happy to do that, but.
Okay, but then if I have to add money to continue on with the project, can I still do that at a future date from gas tax?
I mean,
Budget
you,
amendment.
you can, yeah, gas tax, you know, ideally, we've been through this process for months. You identify things, we put them in gas tax. That doesn't mean we cannot add projects, capital items throughout the year, make an adjustment to the budget. We've done that. We try our best to do it now. But if you're unable to do that, there's always opportunity throughout the year.
Okay, well, I'll take that opportunity then later on, after we have dissected and explained the current or past budget and the remainder that's there and how much will be needed, because I don't have any idea what to put aside. So I think we can talk about that later. You were actually going to help me formulate a motion to create a report, and we just haven't gotten around to that. So, okay, we'll let that go for now. Brenda, it's going to be quick. We've got
Thank you,
10 minutes.
Mr. Chair. Area D's got the biggest budgets. I don't want to be a flash here. I need the same time as the other directors have had to address their
Well, we
issues.
are-
And so I want to say that I want to address the tax shift in one of the few areas of discretionary spending that Area D has, which is community parks. And I would like to reduce the community parks requisition by $50,000. I could direct that staff specifically identify certain projects to reduce that by that amount, the requisition. The parks budget is really getting up there. It needs to be pulled back and maybe some projects delayed till a future year. Off the top of my head, I can think of a new slide for the Middle Notch Park, which
So I
came in
don't
about
think we need-
20,000.
So-
There's,
don't need
okay,
to-
So,
so
Mr. Chair,
specifically in
If
the
I,
line items.
if I can just maybe help speed this along a little bit. So there's quite a difference between what Director Lee is speaking about is reducing requisition and then eliminating things, as I hear talk about capital projects, which are not affected by requisition. Area D Parks is a single participant service. If you were just looking to slash requisition by 50,000, that would mean you're reducing operational items, which would have to do with public health, safety, maintenance. I wouldn't support that, and you would need a resolution from the board as your single participant service, and you don't have the authority to vote on that individually. And I can tell you right now that staff certainly would not support that. If you have individual, and those things won't, your capital projects that are funded through either grants or reserves or gas tax, they're not going to affect the requisition. So you can eliminate those, but your requisition is not going to change. The requisition is there to support the operations, maintenance, health, and safety of the parks, and we won't support a resolution to the board that you just arbitrarily knock $50,000 off that.
Okay, well, I'm on page 91 of the Area D Parks budget, and I'm looking at the contract services, equipment, machinery, rental leases, machinery, equipment, repairs, maintenance, machine shop equipment, minor capital. Minor capital is in there at 12,500, and contribution to capital works, machinery, equipment reserve is 20,000. I don't see the problem in at least taking that 20,000 contribution to reserve out for this year in deference to the tax shift, and maybe doing it next year in 2023. That would save 20,000 on the requisition.
Staff
I
wouldn't
don't,
support that, Director Lee. So if you
Why
want to
not?
have, because they're
why
operation,
not?
I'm explaining, because they're operational maintenance item, that staff who have years of education experience working in that field to support the existing parks would not recommend taking that money out. You need to have
But it's a
asset,
reserve fund. It's
which
a reserve fund. It's not doing
exactly.
anything.
It's a reserve fund to help support the replacement of parks equipment, maintenance. We would not support reducing that. That money
Okay, what about
needs to be
minor
there.
capital?
Minor
What about the
capital, minor
capital?
capital again is money to replace infrastructure, aging infrastructure.
Okay, they wanted to put a new slide into Middle Notch Park. Can that not wait till next year?
Where's the money coming from? So let's talk.
12,500.
Slow down, slow down. Let's talk about where that money's coming from, because I don't want you to eliminate something that is having no
Okay.
effect on requisition. So
It's-
identify the individual item. Annika will help to
the
see where that money's
individual
coming.
item is 0126144468, $12,000. If that's the slide, like the slide was
Okay,
quoted
well, this,
in a
let's,
previous meeting at 20,000. So
let's let Mike and Annika find that and identify what that is and where the money's coming from.
Thank you through the chair to the director. All of the capital projects that we've been carried forward have been approved through the committee and board. Those items are supported through gas tax funds and reserves. We have not populated any capital replacement projects with requisition funds. The minor capital amount that you're referring to, I believe, 468 of 12.5, is allocated for individual minor capital repairs and replacement for the year of 2022. It is not specific to a new shiny. It is our ongoing base budget required to maintain and operate our parks and reduce the risk and liability to the regional district.
So you do have,
Okay, but
Annika, you do have
but
gas tax funds. Don't interrupt me. I'm speaking. Don't
Excuse me,
interrupt
Bri-
me.
Excuse me, Brenda, I have a clarification that I need, okay? I would like to ask our CAO, did you not say, Dave, at the beginning, that this meeting was for us to either be able to add or subtract things from the budget? And I'm
You
speaking
could,
in
Mr.
your
Chair, but what
favor, Brenda.
Mr. Chair, you can, but I'm telling you that staff is not going to support a recommendation to reduce requisition that has the effect on repairs, maintenance, health and safety and liability issues. You can make that resolution on a single participant service, and if the board supports you, then we will do it. I'm just saying there isn't a chance that staff is going to support a resolution for reduction in an operations maintenance budget that has effect on maintenance, repairs, health, safety, and liability. So make whatever resolution you want.
Can I jump
Okay,
in real quick there? I
I
just got
would
one quick.
just like to add, just one thing, if the motion or the suggestion, direction, whatever, was just to reduce the requisition by 50,000 and not target anything, is that acceptable to you?
No, because everything that Ronica has just explained to you in his requisition is not capital replacement, is for the operations and maintenance of the park, which again supports operations, maintenance, health, safety, and liability. We would not support that. If you just had a blanket resolution, said chop the requisition by 50,000, you would be affecting our ability to maintain those facilities, that infrastructure, and put at risk the health, safety, and liability of that service. And we would not recommend that.
Yeah.
You can make whatever resolution you want, and if the board supports it, then we will make the adjustment. But you do not have the autonomy in a single participant service as the EA director to give that direction solely.
Well, these are Area D parks that Area D taxpayers are paying for, and I'm the director, and I am directing that we look at reducing the budget for Area D parks, and not to affect health, safety, maintenance, and operation, not at all. I mean, I note in the budget for Area D parks that there's transfers from my gas tax funds, and there's transfers from reserves totaling 133,689 into this budget for capital revenue sources. And so, in my opinion, if we have a reduction in the requisition for other things that we might not need this year, like there's a slide identified for 20,000 in a previous meeting for Middle Notch Park. If that is a health and safety problem, as far as planning goes, just take the thing out of there and get rid of it, recycle it at the metal recycler. And then next year we can look at buying a new slide.
It
We
doesn't
don't have
affect
to buy it
requisition.
this year.
It doesn't have any effect on requisition.
What does have an effect on requisition then?
Operations,
What can I?
operations and maintenance. You can't, these are thin budgets. They're to operate and maintain these facilities. The capital items are coming from different funding sources. There is no room to reduce operations, maintenance, health, and safety. You're asking to reduce a requisition that affects those items. Annika has just told you that the items you're talking about have zero effect on requisitions. They're funding through non-requisition sources.
Well, the only thing I can see that's different from last year is a 20,000 increase in operating. And I believe that is the Middle Notch slide. And I don't believe that that is a health, maintenance, safety issue, because you could just get rid of the slide for this year.
I'm saying
Replace
it's not
it
funded
next
through
year.
requisition. So it may not have been in the last year's budget, but is not funded through requisition.
Well, it's a real mystery to me how this is laid out then. Identify, the planning operations general manager should identify areas, because the budget's gone up and the budget needs to go, with respect to requisition, needs to go down to address the tax shift matter that we talked about earlier. And I'm trying to find a way. And I wish the
Well,
staff would be cooperative about
I'm
that.
telling you,
because
the operations budget in Area D parks is thin, and there is no room to lower requisition without compromising health, safety, liability, period.
So what are the gas tax funds being used for, the 133,000?
Capital items. You can't use gas tax
What
for
are those?
operational issues.
So what are those? I didn't sign off on any gas
Yes, you
tax
did.
money.
You would have
being
signed
spent.
off
What
on,
is it?
you would have signed off on every gas tax.
So what are those projects?
Annika or Mike, you can speak to it.
8,000, or sorry, 8,000 was the inventory assessment. And then we have the balance is like 55. I think that's from our project that we've been carrying forward for a couple of years.
So like, I didn't want to do the inventory assessment or the master plan project that planning wanted to do for parks, master planning, and I asked it to be removed.
Yeah, the master
We don't
planning.
want to do that.
So the master planning was removed, but the 8,000 for the inventory assessment was stayed. I believe you voted for that.
Well, I don't know why we need to do that. $8,000 is $8,000 too much.
Through the chair, if I may, Director Lee, The budget has not increased $20,000 in 2022. If I may, Mike, please correct me if I'm wrong with your numbers. Our budget for 614 for 2022 has increased 2.5%. That's $5,000. That $5,000 has been increased to cover costs associated with the ongoing maintenance of our parks, primarily almost 100% of that for costs associated with our porta potty services in our parks. We have not increased the budget for 2022 at all other than that. We have requested no new shinies, no new capital projects this year or last year. Anything that you see within this budget has been a carry forward for a number of years, all approved through the financial planning process. I have no room in this budget to cut $50,000. If you're asking a $50,000 cut to this budget, we will significantly reduce the service.
I'm just
Okay, may I
asking you
ask
to
a
look.
question, Mr. CAO?
So
Dave,
Mr.
can
Chair,
you
just,
please-
Mike, if you can blow up the screen so we can see the individual line items in here. This is a thin budget. You're talking about items in here for hydro, water, legal fees, signage. Like, these are tiny line items here. Advertising, dues and maintenance, contract services that we already have in place. There's nothing in here to reduce anything by. And as Aniko said, the requisition is for all intents and purposes the same as last year, which you can argue if our budget is the same as last year, we've lost ground because CPI is going up. The cost of hydro is going up. We are falling behind. There is no chance we can take $50,000 out of requisition in this service. It would collapse.
Okay, Dave, may I ask a question? Just to simplify this discussion, without getting into details of line items, is there anything that a director, being Director Lee in this situation, that a director may reduce in the requisition? Is there any way to just say, I would like to reduce $10,000 from the requisition period?
Well, no, you need to identify that. You look at the line items, you can't avoid the details in here. If you want to take away $10,000 in requisition, so I phone BC Hydro and tell them to not give us a hydro bill anymore, that we won't pay the water bill anymore, we won't pay legal fees. Like, this is
But we
why.
have things
This
like
is
survey fees, travel,
Yes.
courses, things
Survey
that aren't
survey
happening
fees,
because of Omicron,
Yes, we spend this money.
meeting expenses.
Yes.
Okay, let's put it down
Find
a
a
notch.
way.
Okay, let's just
Well, no,
knock it down a notch.
no, you can't just say, is there a line item? These are operational issues that directors should not be involved in, first of all. The Local Government Act prohibits direction on a single participant service because of this to the board. So
Okay, I'm giving direction to the staff to review all the any discretionary spending, survey fees, travel, that kind of thing, office expenses, and see whether you can come up with any savings to apply to the requisition. And that's my request.
Okay,
You
fine.
should be able to find,
No.
you should be able to find some funding that's not critical, that we can make some amendment to the requisition to address this tax shift thing. Like, I'm just asking you to review it because I can't tell what are the survey fees for?
Well,
There's
nor
no
should you.
description there's no description in the budget.
We have hundreds
no
and hundreds
description.
of line items in here. These are operational issues that
I'm
I don't know
requesting that
why
they
we're even
look.
talking about them. There will, I'm
Through
telling
the
you,
chair,
there will be.
through the chair to staff, I'm requesting that our manager of Parks and Planning review the budget in detail to see whether there's any cost savings that can be applied to the requisition for Area D.
That's the request, Mr. CAO and planning and Mike. There has been a request made. If you look at it and there's no room, you just tell the EASC that. If there is some, you tell us that. I think we could end this discussion now.
Yeah, we've heard the
If-
direction,
if
Mr. Chair.
you-
You can move on to the next one.
Okay, thank you. That's all I wanted to know is
Just
that.
want to say that
Look.
it is bizarre though, that another area like Area B can put money aside for, acquisition of land and things, and they can give direction, but I can't on my own parks budget. Really chokes me up.
No, that's, Mr. Chair, that is so out of order. The Area B director is increasing something for an additional amount that she wants to acquire something. You are trying to reduce requisition that impacts health, safety, liability. Those are
I don't know that for
completely
sure.
opposite.
I don't know that it's all
I'm telling you
safety.
that they are.
Direction has already been accepted by staff. Dave just said it a minute ago. He said, you've given us direction, we can move on. So can we move on? Is there something else, Brenda?
No, I
You
just
still have
thought
your-
that's one of the few discretionary areas that I have that I could maybe
Okay,
reduce. I
well,
already reduced my grant and aid budget. So
We've been
I
told
can't,
now that it's going to be reviewed, so I don't
Yeah.
know what else we can say at this point. Okay,
Okay, move on.
I saw another hand. Was it Gerald? Gerald, did you have something?
No, not me. My hand's not up.
Okay,
Brendan.
all right,
oh, sorry, I'm
Yeah,
putting mine
Brenda.
down.
okay. All right, and is there any, I guess, official direction, motion, et cetera, Dave, that is needed by you as the chief staff member? Do you need anything from this meeting to take away?
No, we have taken notes on all the comments. I think the majority were excellent. They were clear direction. I think they were in appropriate areas. I think it was productive. And we will take this and you will see it in a draft budget come February 9th.
Can I ask one quick question, Mr. Chair?
Okay, Gerald?
Yeah, is it possible for the computer to print out an index for that detailed line thing? Is that, I think there's 100 and some pages there. It takes a while to find an item.
Yes, it does.
Sorry, no, not at all. That was, it's quite, our inherent system's actually quite limited as far as reporting and everything else. So we can manually make one or something, but that would be,
That's a lot of effort.
yeah.
Yeah, no, we can live without it. But you can't sort, I guess, by one of those item names.
Yeah, it spits them out in numerical order, right, wrong. So you'd have to start manually moving the pages around and stuff like that.
Yeah, okay, just a question. Don't worry about it.
Okay, so Noba, last comment. You're muted. You're
Good.
muted.
Thank you. I just put in the chat, if anybody does care to second it, I'd happily move that 2 special East budget meetings be included in future SRD budget calendars. I found this to be very productive.
Second.
Okay, could I make a slight amendment to that motion?
Sure.
Just suggestion to your motion that those 2 additional meetings take place prior to the single participant meetings.
I don't think that would be the most productive, Mr. Chair. I think you need to start with we need direction. We need to start the process off with 2 things. One, a business case from staff, and direction from the EA directors, consolidate that, and then start refining the process. So I think it was appropriate and productive to have one in December and certainly one in January. I think if you have them prior to the one-on-ones, as we've had wholesome discussion today about the tax shift, if we had them prior to the one-on-ones, we would not have that discussion until draft budget. So I would humbly suggest that the one meeting being December and one being January after the business cases and the one-on-ones.
And I tend to concur, and I left the resolution vague enough that it would allow for our wisdom year to year, depending on sequencing changes of things.
Okay, and my only reason suggesting that is that we've heard a number of times this year, this is not a, derogatory comment. It's just that we've heard a number of times that once we have done the one-on-ones, we just can't make any changes. And that, that just somehow doesn't quite work if things change in the electoral areas after a one-on-one, then it seems like there should be an opportunity for change to take place.
Well, I think
So
these
that was
meetings, have shown that we made changes after the one-on-ones, we made changes after the December meetings, and we'll make changes prior to the draft budget on the 9th.
Okay, so on that motion, it was moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
I have something. I think that the meetings would be more productive if they were held January, February, March, right up to our deadline to pass the budget.
That can't happen, Mr. Chair.
Where we can actually know what the assessments are. Like, what's the point of doing budgets and then having BC Assessment Authority hand us these basically rip the rug out from under our feet after we've had a couple meetings? We should have the meetings when we know what the overall impact's going to be of our decisions, not after.
Yeah.
Like, to me, the cart's before the horse right now.
Yeah, you have to do two things, Mr. Chair. You have to plan, and then you have to implement the changes and then have another look at it, is what we've done. We cannot carry East special budget meetings into March. We have a legislative deadline to have the budget approved. We need time to consolidate it, present it, have readings, and then adoption. So I think the timelines that we used this year, December, January, were fine. We cannot push them farther into the year.
Can I call the question? The presented motion allows a lot of flexibility.
Okay, question has been called. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, it's carried.
Move termination.
Second.
Okay, termination. Thank you very much, everybody. I don't think there's anybody opposed. And thank you very much for coming to this meeting.
See you tomorrow at the solid waste.
Woohoo!
Yep.
Woohoo.
Waste. Okay,
Solid waste in hospital. That's our last hopes.
it's solid. We don't have